Hey, everybody, welcome back to Make Others Successful, where we share insights, stories, and strategies about how to build a better workplace. I am joined by three others today. You want to say hi really quick? Mike?
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Emma. I'm our project manager here.
I'm Matt. Been on the podcast a long time.
Yeah, we all know Matt and love Matt. The thing we're talking about today is sort of an evolution of thinking that we've been going through over the past, in hindsight, maybe a year. Back, I remember last summer when we were kind of laying a foundation for communication and then collaboration, and we had launched our guidebook and stuff like that, and has sort of taken different forms over the last year. And I think we're sort of narrowing how we talk about some of that stuff, and we want to try to relay that today and see if it resonates with anybody, and just share our thoughts. The concept that we're talking about is how you should always make sure that you have communication and collaboration nailed down in your workplace, and just a solid foundation for starting before you sort of venture off into trying to optimize things too much or streamline too much process. Lots of thinking behind that. So I'm making broad strokes right now, but to kind of lay out the structure for this conversation, we're going to talk about a little bit of that premise of why it's important to start with those communication and collaboration aspects. And then some of this comes from a recent workshop that we've been through with a client. So section 2 is we're going to talk about kind of what we learned through that process and how it's informing some of what we think about. And then segment 3 is all about how we're actually taking this to market and how we're trying to lay out some options for someone to actually engage with us and get help with these sorts of things in a super simple, easy to understand way. So we're going to be talking about those things in this order. So why is this so important? Why did we even find ourselves navigating to this in the first place? It feels a little bit natural, but lay it out for us.
Yeah, so a lot of this has to do with, when you go back in time to when large tech or business process changes occurred. Everything was done in email. Everything was done with text messages. There wasn't a lot of other alternatives. Mm-hmm. Maybe you had somebody who was doing Skype for Business. Maybe you had somebody doing, one of the other chat platforms that you had. But those platforms didn't really transform how things were being done. It was just moving emails into these other places.
More of the same, yeah.
And because of that, it didn't really matter. There's not yes, start to go implement a new ERP. Yes, go start doing a new task management, project management tool. Just add that technology on the top of the thing and assume that technology is going to handle all of the communication, collaboration needs for that particular type of task, right? Mm-hmm. The world has changed in the last 5 years, maybe even as much as 10 years, depending on how much you've been using the tools. And now you have things like Slack and Teams and these things that go way beyond what email and texting and all these things can do. And if you implement those correctly and you're starting to leverage those in a real way, they will have a huge impact on how you should be doing things like ERPs, things like task management, all of those other things. So if you just go off and you're still currently using email, you're still currently using chat messaging, you're still using these other ways to communicate and collaborate, and then go implement an ERP system, you may be spending way more money than you should be spending. You should be maybe training people on things that isn't really the best way to use it. You're not leveraging what you currently have or the way that you should be communicating most effectively. And so it creates this problem where you really want to solve this problem up here, but you really ought to make sure first that you've transitioned into the modern way of communicating and collaborating before you do that.
Yeah. Okay. So two things. First is what I'm hearing is people can still go try to improve their process and implement things, but it's going to feel similar to how it always has been, if they're not using these tools. But we sort of feel obligated to say, there is this other paradigm that has come to market that does actually impact a lot of that stuff and can make a big downstream effect. And so you might want to step back and pause and think about that.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was, it reminds me a little bit of a similar comment in my Total Communication Reset course. One of the students said, we were reflecting on why this internal communication aspect is so important. And they basically said, like, there is so much downstream of this stuff. Like it's a basis for communicating news and day-to-day work and so many things that it felt like a linchpin to it needed to be right in order for it to translate to all those areas well.
Yeah. So let's really quick set the scene of what we mean by communication collaboration. I know we talk about it on the podcast a lot, but a couple examples like you're giving are, let's say you have a big announcement that the leadership wants to communicate out to the entire organization. How do you communicate that today? Is it a mass email? Are people left off of it a lot? Is your directory up to date? Some of these are common pitfalls of communication through email. So we're talking about when you communicate changes or even within teams, do you have that foundation set up? Are you using modern tools? That's the communication side of it. The collaboration side, how do you collaborate on documents? Do you send them as attachments back and forth to each other? Spoiler, that's not the best way.
Yeah.
So that's the type of example that we're talking about of setting up a foundation within those spaces. So we'll keep saying communication collaboration a lot. That's what we mean.
Yeah.
It's another way to think about it is the way you organize the knowledge that is built within your organization, right?
Yes.
A lot of the knowledge that's built is through conversations, through collaboration, through work that's happening between people. That creates knowledge, and that knowledge needs to be managed, curated, all of that kind of stuff. The other thing that I was thinking about when you were mentioning that is that it's there's a huge marketing boom around AI and around what that does for businesses. And I'm not saying that Teams and the way it collaborates is the exact same in regards to the transformation of how people communicate, but an organization that is current as I think a good maybe visualization for people to think about this, because I think people have thought about this a lot and there's a lot of marketing going on about it. People that have a good communication and collaboration foundation will find the implementation of AI tools to be relatively easy, right? Because they've set up the knowledge in the appropriate locations and given people the right permissions, and everybody has these things in the right spots, and then AI can work, and it works pretty well. People who are still using email for everything, people who are still doing individual chat messages and all of these other things, AI is going to be a lot more challenging for them to implement and be effective at because they don't have this foundation of managing that knowledge, managing that communication and collaboration effectively.
Yeah. That's a good example of a pitfall. I feel like there might be a couple other ones that we can think of like, if someone doesn't lay this foundation, what risks do they run? It reminds me a little bit of a previous client of they wanted to build an app and you started to ask them about, what happens when this app is done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a really good example. Right? They had not given any thought to the fact that their previous implementations failed because they didn't communicate the change was coming to anybody. And everybody's like, oh, this sucks. I don't know how to use it. And they were frustrated. And so then eventually they came around and talked to us, and we poked and prodded a little bit and found out, well, you didn't communicate that very well. So that therein lies a problem. And so this time around, what are you going to do different? Right.
Yes.
And then like other examples that are smaller in scale are, working for a customer that asks you to implement a feature because they have a special need for a customer, and then they don't communicate that change to the rest of the team. And so then they're the only person using the new feature or knowing how to use the new feature. Somebody, comes across it, uses it incorrectly. Like there's all kinds of stuff like that. So if you're implementing streamlining process, implementing apps, whatever that is, you can't just fly blind. The organization needs to understand what's coming and how to use it.
We do that exercise, hopes and fears, at the beginning of most of our engagements, where we ask the team, the leadership team, whoever we're with, what is your hope for this project? What's your fear for this project? And a lot of times they fear that this project, whatever we're working on, whatever feature we're building, will, fall down in the same way that every other project they've tried to implement, or they tried this once before and it didn't work. And I would say 9 times out of 10, when we start asking why, it really didn't have a lot to do with the feature or the thing they were trying to implement. It had everything to do with how they communicated it to their people, and just the change management and the adoption there. So I think that's what Matt and you, Mike, are getting at, of if you don't have the communication set up and really the collaboration spaces already structured, good luck implementing with adoption and change management.
In the midst of building something, having a way to gather feedback appropriately,
right,
that lets you
iterate.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
So I'm going to call out the two aspects of that and really kind of try to clarify what we mean when we talk about making sure that you're ready with the foundation. There's one aspect of it that is the work, the creating, the communication, and that's something that can be helped by the ways that we can do it, because we can lower the barrier, right? But no matter what, somebody has to, an organization has to have a mind for change management, a mind for, it's not just about implementing the thing. So that's a mindset and a making space, making capacity to go deal with that. The other end, which is the thing that we're mostly talking about, the main thing we're talking about, is you should be using tools. Even if you try to do that, if you're sending that out in an email to the team that is available today and the new person gets hired tomorrow, they missed it because they didn't get the email, right? And that's the most basic, simple thing. If you use these tools effectively, the barrier to doing it and the connectedness for the organization about these things will be so much better that it becomes easier to do those things. And that's really the piece that we're talking about, right? If your organization today doesn't put the headspace into it, or does put the headspace into it, but you don't have the framework to make it easy to do, that's where we're like, hey, you really should solve that.
So for example, if you want to make onboarding cheaper and easier, focus on the knowledge that the organization of your knowledge that will pour into that and feed that, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have that, guess what? You spend a lot of money on onboarding.
Yeah.
Sitting in a room teaching somebody.
Yeah, have a great SharePoint intranet and have knowledge saved in a good spot. Another good example, just practically speaking, and I'd bring this up with our workshop, is making sure your teams are structured well, where everyone knows that they're on the teams that they're supposed to be on, their notifications are set up, everyone feels like they know how to change their notifications as their role progresses or changes. Those are just little tweaks that you should have rolled out and everyone feeling comfortable with before you move forward.
Yeah, let's go into the workshop here in just a second. The zooming out, the reason why we're talking about this is because at least in my opinion, we feel like we're kind of stumbling on this thing over and over, where it's this is really important. And the more that we talk to people, the more it feels like this is a unique line of thinking that we really need to solidify. And so we're we need to talk about this. We need to teach people about this, and we need to, make it as easy as possible to help people with it as possible. So that's why you might feel us sort of the situation that Mike was kind of laying out is there's this aspect of improving your communication collaboration. And once that's quote unquote done, you can go and optimize and streamline processes where the manual processes just get automated and you don't have to touch things. And all of that busy work just gets more and more streamlined, for a lack of a better term. And it's just hard to do without having some of these systems in place. So,
and you can do it the opposite way, but we're recognizing, especially as we engage with people who have tried that, it very rarely works well.
Yeah.
Or it takes double the amount of time and double the amount of money and double the amount of effort, and it's just not as easy.
Yeah. We're finding ourselves having to walk people back a little bit consistently. So some of the preface of this is we had just done that workshop with a client. I want you guys to kind of go through what was taught in the workshop, maybe some things that we felt like did really well and some things that we didn't, that we learned that we would do differently next time. Because I feel like some of those activities and what we taught might help someone understand a little bit more about what we're talking about here?
So we broke it into 3 sessions. And I mean, part of why we're having this podcast on communication collaboration is because the first session was all about the mindset of resetting internal communication. So how can we all get on the same page about how we're going to communicate, set up some structure within Microsoft Teams, decide this is how we want things organized, channel, topic-based communication, all of that. And then we built from there. Then we went on to, okay, meetings. You're going to have meetings. Meetings are part of work. They're part of life. How do you use what we just talked about in internal communication to apply getting knowledge out of meetings into a place where everyone at the organization can use that knowledge? And we use some AI tools in that as well. AI can be really helpful with meetings. And then we moved forward into getting actual work done. So how do you get projects done? You've
Which
got
felt
communication.
like a release for so many people.
Yeah, right. You've got your communication, you've got your meetings down, and now let's get down to work and actually do the work. So all 3 of those are important. They're all interconnected, but we felt that was the right order. And like you said, we almost stumbled upon it as we were putting everything together, but it feels like you can't talk about the 3rd thing without talking about the first and the second.
Yep. So what was the nature of the workshop, right? It was one client, so it was one team. Can you talk someone through like what the activities looked like and what a day of that looked like?
Yeah, I mean, so it's really, our workshops that we're doing with customers is really like Emma said, broken up into 3 sessions. And we have conversations with the customer to kind of understand what their specific needs are within the framework that we believe is the right way to go about helping people with these problems. And when we go through that, it's a 2-hour session. We have a break in the middle. We attempt our best to do content that we might be intermixing content that we might be speaking, demonstrations, activities, interaction with the attendees to really bring it full circle, right? Mm-hmm. So as Emma said, we did some sessions where we started talking about what's your teams look like? What is that? How does that work? This is how notifications work. Let's show you what that happens and why it's so important to understand how notifications work, right? There is a bunch of content, and it's really spread it into a couple different things. Some of it is mindset thinking, right? Like, in fact, the first day, a lot of it is heavily on the mindset piece because it is different. Email is not the same as these other tools, and you need to think about them differently. You need to understand how they work differently so that you can kind of put it in a place in your mind that you go, oh, I get it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really interweaving those 2 different things. So, on the meetings things, we did, example meetings where we showed what's going on and, provided feedback. And there was a lot of interaction between us and the attendees. The
common thread through all 3 of the sessions, which, I guess on the face value, you'd think, well, 6 hours of content, that's a lot. But like Matt was saying, there was a lot of back and forth. And I think the common thread was helping each individual workshop attendee, and I think we had 15 on that workshop,
15,
14 or 15, each of them kind of stepping in to become their own champion for their own team within that organization, and understanding that the goal is to not work as just an individual, but to get the knowledge that they're either working on or having meetings about or communicating about to an organizational level. Mm-hmm. So all 3 sessions ended up with that as sort of the common goal. How do we stop being so siloed, even in our own brains, all of us on a meeting, mm-hmm. but create shared knowledge and use modern tools to share that at an organizational level?
Which, to be clear, is the basis for many of the other things that you might do, right? Mm-hmm. So when you think about going heavily into project or task management, well, if you're going to be using the Microsoft tools in particular, Planner requires a team. Right? If you don't have a team, you can't create a planner board, right? If you want to, they're introducing complexity into that.
Yeah,
I mean, now you have rosters, individual boards, but those boards are like in your OneDrive, which goes back to the organization level or individual level thing. Like, there's a bunch of complexities there, which is why it's good to have that foundation, right? The other thing is like, if you think about custom applications, right? Well, if you have those things set up properly, I can now grant permissions to those applications using the groups that got created in the team. Because when you create a team, you create a group.
Sounds like an IT director's dream there.
it all kind of goes together. I'm not saying it's perfect. I won't kid anybody. When we had the conversations with our workshop attendees, there are serious failings and gaps and challenges. But if you can take this approach, you're setting yourself up for being able to do these things better going forward. Yeah. It's by far better than email, direct chat message. Like it is better.
On the workshop, really quick, Emma, I'm sure there's things in your mind that you're like, I would do this again for sure because it worked really well, versus I wouldn't do this, or I would do this differently. Are there components that you found, like someone that you just want to like share, worked well or didn't work well?
Yeah. Well, I think part of the benefit of doing a workshop with a cohort within your organization is that you give space to the organization to talk amongst themselves on what's going to work best for their team. So one of the huge benefits that I would say we definitely do again is having breakout rooms within each session or within each day. So we would separate, everyone would go to their little breakout room, we'd have prompts, and together different people from different parts of the organization would talk about what works on their team, what doesn't right now, and how they would actually apply what they're learning. So that, I think, is a huge benefit to not only the organization, but to us as well, to think through, okay, how can we help people along in the implementation phase? So breakout rooms are definitely an exercise you would expect within a workshop.
So another thing that we did in this particular workshop that I thought worked really well is provide information about how the organization sits today, right? Giving metrics about how many external emails are you sending versus internal emails? How many chat messages are you sending versus, a lot of people don't know how to get that information and don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to think about that information, right? And I think that was helpful to them, right? I think they took that information and went, oh, I can easily see in 6 months, we should start to see this. Yeah. And we should start to see this, right?
You can actually measure progress.
Yeah, you can start to measure progress.
Yeah. So we typically get access to the tenant and are able to look at all of those metrics.
Poke around, sneak around.
Yeah, and create some stories and some visuals from that data in a way that others may not have connected it to, why they're seeing what they're seeing. So.
Yeah.
I'm having flashbacks to you being like, looking at the attendees and being like, and so we know.
We'll know if you're doing it. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's another
what a
thing.
good teacher does, right?
Yeah.
That's what we tell ourselves.
I mean, everybody needs to be held accountable at some level, right? You need a way to know whether or not, it's even if you're making your best effort, when you're able to see, I only made this much progress, it helps check you and make sure that you can reflect on why that is, right? Because the real question is, why didn't you make more progress? And maybe there's a real reason that you can work through and make better.
Yeah, that's awesome. The one that I'll throw in the ring is this was our first time doing it with the Surface Hub.
Yes.
We've done like on-screen graphics or like things that we draw on like an easel before, but we used the Surface Hub on this one. I think we would use that again. It was nice.
It was great as a virtual workshop because, if you go to a regular workshop or a regular auditorium, you're usually looking at the speaker and there's a screen behind them. That's hard in virtual scenarios to mimic. And so we were able to have a screen that we could interact with that our audience, our attendees could see. Yep. And it really worked well. Yeah.
What didn't work well?
Oh man, live retro right now.
We just did a retro on this.
So probably one of the biggest things that we would change a little bit is we talked a lot about the timings of things and how much time we're using. It's a real struggle to, especially in the virtual scenario, to keep everyone engaged and to really be able to be responsive to, how engaged they are or how not engaged they are. It's also a challenge related to the amount of content that we have versus how much work they're doing. And so dialing that in right to be, have the right amount of, you go out and do this thing, try it, get involved in it versus us explaining it. I think we did a really good job of covering a lot of content that I think is, are there things we probably could have cut out? Maybe some, but I think a lot of it was really important for what they're trying to do. And all the feedback we've gotten has been very positive about all of the information, but it's a lot of content. It's a lot of information. So timing is a big one, right? So both the length of time, the organization of the time, but then also how compressed it is or not compressed it is. It's 3 sessions. We did it in basically a week and a half or something, basically. Yeah. We want, we've had this conversation before. It's, we want to try to get stuff done quickly. It gives people, it keeps it fresh in their mind. They don't have a big gap between things, but at the same time, we don't want to overload people. So I would say that's probably by far one of the biggest takeaways that we have from it.
The metaphor that we were using that I have to share because I like it, because I'm a skier. So if you're a skier, you'll get this. If greens are the easy runs, blues are the medium runs, and black diamonds are the hardest, and you want to be able to ski the black diamond, I would compare that to our workshop in those 3 stages of really that communication, collaboration mindset is the green. And what Matt's saying is, can we spread that out over a couple weeks potentially and have better just engagement, because you're able to ski a couple greens maybe for a week or 2, try it out, then progress to the blues, then you're feeling confident on those to then get to the black diamond. Technically, you could ski a green one day, next day go to a blue, and then go to a black. You could do it. And that is, in some ways, what organizations want to do if they want to, get this content out quickly and get their people trained up. But is it going to be better the next time if we do this to give some days, if not weeks, in between sessions to build up to those levels, to feel really confident to take on that third and final piece of information?
It's a hard thing because when you think about trying to keep costs down and keep our engagement with the customer up, doing something over, because these things can take 6 months, a year to really, really, really fully take hold and be able to be expert at the black diamond, right? It is not something that is going to be, you can't flip a switch and tomorrow just change it like that, right? Tomorrow you can start to do things better, but you're not going to be better for a while. And so it's that balance of figuring out the right thing, which we're tweaking all the time. Like we're making that better all the time.
And I do want to put in that we have that structure for a reason. We do our workshop in these different sessions, and then we stick around for a month, for 4 weeks, where we check in once a week, and we assign some homework and have some expectations. And, we are looking to see if any of the metrics are changing, to just track that progress. So it's not like we just give all the information and then leave.
Push you down the hill.
But it is trying to find the right balance between, how much are we still there guiding and how much are we letting them implement on their own?
That's actually one of the biggest differences, I think, between what we're doing and what a lot of organizations have been doing and what we have done in the past. Like we've done traditional training in the past, more just, instructor-led trainings. But it doesn't feel great, because there's almost no time for them to really sit with it, use it, come up with their real questions and be able to ask those questions and get them answered. So, I'm really excited and happy with how we're able to provide support for people after that workshop, after that process.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like it definitely has given people a picture of like that workshop process. I want to transition us to our last segment here, which is how are we taking all of these things and boiling them down into something that someone could actually engage with and implement. And it reminds me a little bit of the whole skiing thing. Is we've learned over the past year or two that people don't just want to sit and listen to an instructor tell them how they would go down a black diamond and us say, okay, go do it, right? That's not guiding. That's I don't know. That's teaching. How do we become more of a guide in this process, and how do we articulate that as a service?
So everything that Matt is talking about is kind of pointing to this new product that we're putting together, which is essentially, we've thrown around the term boot camp, but that's, I think, where we're landing on of it's our team communication boot camp, because what we're trying to do is have a cohort of, attendees come into this and actually be with us, on the project together, not teacher instructor, but actually a part of something where for 21 days, or it could be 4 weeks, it could be 3 weeks, we'll figure out timing. But for that amount of time, you're going to change your mindset, set up your structure, get a framework going, and actually start using it. We'll track the metrics we'll have the progress, see if you're actually doing it. And then be right along with you to support you as you then build on top of that. So we're calling it a boot camp because I think it does need to be some level of intensity, because you do have to really change the way you think and change the way you're doing things. But then from there, we'll support how to implement what you probably really want to do on top of that foundation.
Sure. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So there's a segment of aligning strategically, making sure we understand what's happening, teaching maybe leadership about how they should share this with their team. And then I think we're talking about creating like a very abbreviated version of where the entire like organization can watch this, maybe a couple quick hits of, hey, this is coming. You should know we're going to be shifting like the way that we talk about things a little bit, how we communicate. And then we start like a pilot of that process of, hey, let's try this. And then we do what you're talking about earlier of throughout the process, we're going to be checking in, seeing how things are going and adjusting.
But a couple of common themes you're probably seeing in this whole conversation we're having is leadership needs to be on board, but end users also need to be aware of what's going on. If leadership's just pushing, that doesn't actually do much most of the time. And then also you need to have some form of champions in the mix as well, whether that is your leadership team or some variation of end users and leadership. And I think that needs to be figured out strategically, but we're here to help with that depending on how your organization is set up. But that's what we have seen work time and time again. And time again, people who have come to us have tried doing it not that way. So that's why I think we're so passionate about leading in this way and implementing new strategies in this way.
Nice.
Just to put a bow on that, the boot camp is for your champions and your leadership. So it's targeted at those groups, right? If you already have them, great. This is a product that you can buy and deliver. We can deliver it right to them, that group of people. If you don't have them, this is a way for you to start to identify them and include them and create that group. And the champions, we have a whole podcast on the champions model. It really is focused at taking that smaller group in the organization and giving them the tools and the mindset to start implementing and spreading that change throughout the organization.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'm excited. We're still finalizing like pricing and timeline and a couple of things. By the time this podcast sees the light of day, you will likely have seen something from us about this because we're very eager to get it out there. But the only other thing I'll mention is we're working on a similar kind of thing for intranets. For the sake of time, we're not going to go too far into it. But how do we come alongside someone who might not have an intranet, lay the foundation of how they should build out an intranet? We help them lay that foundation and train them of like how to take it from there and continue to build like a centralized knowledge base for their employees and their organization. So that one's quick on the heels of this other one. But I would love to know if that like team communication bootcamp resonates with anybody and feels like it would solve any problems. We're keeping fingers crossed, and this is sort of like our behind the curtain. This is what we're thinking and what we're seeing. So that's what we're going to be promoting here soon. So,
and if you're listening to this and you're thinking, my Microsoft Teams is a mess, I never know how to communicate with people, I always am, sending a file back with version F5717 final.
Yeah.
This is what we created for you because we hear that so often from our clients. And sometimes it comes out in a project we're not even working on communication in, and we just figure out that, whoa, you really need some help in this area. But if that's you, you're who we created this
Reach
for.
out.
Yeah. Let's recap really quick about kind of what we talked about. The importance of starting with communication and collaboration, why we believe that's such a strong foundation for people to start with. We don't think you can get very far unless you really sort that out and lay that foundation. And then some of our learnings from the workshop of like, how do you actually start improving these things? What works, what doesn't, and how do you spread this knowledge and this new way of working throughout an organization? It's not a magic bullet. It's not a flip of a switch. So there's some strategy there. And then lastly, just how we're going to take this to market, how we're going to say, here's how we help people with this. And yeah, we'd love any feedback on those topics and what people think of that.
If boot camp seems too intense, let
Yeah.
us know.
Yeah.
But I like the term boot camp.
Yeah.
I don't know. Barry's boot camp does really well. People like going to that workout class. So.
Yeah. We're trying to make it, it sound like what it is.
Yes. Yeah.
So
it should invoke kind of that change spirit of,
Yes.
all right, we're embarking on a new chapter for our
we're going to
organization.
get fit.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Any last thoughts to close us out? Okay. Good way. No, I do have one closing thought. For those of you watching on video, this is sort of like a different setup where we're very casual, like in a living room kind of setting here, trying something different. I want to shout out to whoever left a comment on one of our YouTube videos about me wearing a plain white t-shirt and not getting dressed for work. And I just want to show you, I'm wearing another plain white t-shirt here.
Yeah.
And
Come
we're just
on,
hanging
white
out.
T-shirts.
Yeah. We're here at work. We're getting stuff done.
Yeah.
I hope you found this helpful. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time.